great spirit of the universe. I pray that these words will find resonance in this place and beyond, resonating within the heart of the universe. If the only prayer you said was, thank you, that would be enough. The opening quote is from Meister Eckhart, 13th century mystic. Highlighting this quote in a recent post, Gianluigi Gugliermetto, an Italian, obviously, cautions, but let's not trivialize Eckhart's sentence. He meant that the essence of prayer is welcoming reality, living it not begrudgingly, but fully. There is no need for elaborate petitions to God if one is present, attentive, and accepting. That is the only good ground for a true prayer of thanks. And that ground is possible only after leaving aside idealizations. Welcoming reality, living it fully. Imagine that. Imagine if we were able to live our current reality fully. Makes me shake. Imagine if we could look at our history, our individual history, our national history, and even our human history, realistically. For many of us, this is a tall order. Maybe not possible. It's no easy task to be present, attentive, and accepting. As fragile human beings, we tend to cling to our idealizations or myths. We've always done that. Perhaps it's a necessary protection. Even a way for us to make sense out of the vicissitudes of life, the contradictions that Thurman saw as neither final nor ultimate. Certainly Howard Thurman spoke often of our search for community that was in part based on our mythologies. He's even called a mystic, right? He writes in the book, The Search for Common Ground, of the creation myth of the Hopi. He describes the work of the Spider-Woman, who spoke of the phases of creation as the mystery, the breath, of life and the warmth of love. The Spider Woman says that the people she created were made for joy and to give thanks to the Creator. Is that what we're thankful for this Thanksgiving time? Are we able to meditate on a sense of gratitude for all we have experienced, the reality and the fullness of it, including the mystery, the breath, the warmth of love? I did this momentarily over the Thanksgiving holiday, as was suggested to me by one of the teachers that comes into my inbox. And I looked at it and I thought, oh, a Thanksgiving meditation. I don't know. That never works for me, I said to myself. And I said, well, okay, but I'll try it. And so I tried it. And this particular meditation was about just sitting somewhere, not closing your eyes, leaving your eyes open, and looking around you at the things around you, or feeling inside the things that you might be grateful for. Much to my surprise, it was almost as if the spirits within my room, all of them, conspired to come at me like this. Like this. I was out of breath. It was so overwhelming. So I want to say that even for a skeptic like me, a naysayer, as I've been called, it can work. There can be an opening where we can become more attentive, more present, and then accepting of these wonderful gifts that we are thankful for. So, we'll see. But for me, this Thanksgiving holiday tends to uncover a lot of difficult feelings. The contradictions, which led me, I guess, to the consideration of gratitude, Meister Eckhart, and to the Native American creation myth. I was reading a book entitled All the Real Indians Died Off, Myths About Native Americans, written by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz and Dina Gilio Whitaker. In that book, they shatter the myths about Native Americans that abound in our culture. Let's begin with the traditional story of the Pilgrims. First of all, I have to say that this led me to call my brother. My brother is the genealogist of the family. If you ask him, he'll just go on and on and on. This path and that ancestor, and by the way, that ancestor, and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, oh, I'm gonna ask him. And yeah, I heard things I heard and I kind of thought I already knew was that one of my ancestors was among the group of pilgrims on the Mayflower. Causes me a great deal of pain. I suspect it causes me pain even when I'm not as aware of it as I am at Thanksgiving time, since it's part of my ancestral trauma. It's there. And it takes an ability to welcome reality. Live it, not begrudgingly, but fully in order to heal. Not easy, but something we all must do if we want a good ground for a true prayer of thanks. They wrote in their book that it's important to first uncover the backstory of Thanksgiving. They write that the Pilgrims weren't the first Europeans to come to North America in 1620 or back in Jamestown in 1607. And of course, they weren't the last. By this time, according to Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz, Europeans had been traveling to North American continent and founding colonies there for well over a century. Of course, we also know that others came here as well, including Africans looking for opportunity. The authors write that another myth states that the Pilgrims arrived to an unoccupied wilderness. The natives living in that area were mostly farmers. And there were an estimated 24 to 100,000 members of the Wampanoags. And we know that the Pilgrims, starving after they arrived, admitted in journals to stealing food from the native graves and homes, to spreading disease, and otherwise taking advantage of the native peoples. Dunbar Ortiz goes on to describe a treaty established between the colonists and the native leaders that was, in actuality, quite short-lived. One of the native leaders, known as Squanto, had been kidnapped as a child, sold into slavery, and shipped off to England. Upon his return, he found himself the sole male survivor of his village 1 year before the arrival of the Pilgrims. This also shatters the myth of the simplistic, monolithic native culture. Of what transpired on the actual day of Thanksgiving, historians do not all agree. But many suspect that the natives in the area heard the sound of guns being discharged by the exuberant Pilgrims in celebration of the harvest. They went to investigate and were then allowed to stay for the meal, which they incidentally helped to provide. this day for the warm and loving relationship of the pilgrims and the natives? Not exactly. But it seems that we may still be able to reimagine the myth, the idealization, that in the words of Howard Thurman is something deep within that reminds a person that the intent of the creator of life and the living substance is that people must live in harmony within themselves and with one another and with all life. We want to live in harmony. We want to honor the work of the Creator. Something deep within is constantly reminding us that the harmony is lost. This loss is described by Frank Waters in the book of the Hopi. Writing of the fourth world created by Spider-Woman, he explains, the fourth world, the present one, is the full expression of man's ruthless materialism and imperialistic will. It seems this is where my European ancestors lived, and where we still live today. But listen to Thurman. He says that there is a way back to the harmony that we lost, to our potential that has been unactualized, to a place where we could truly live together in peace. I think actually the answer is all around us. Thurman describes it as a search. He outlines the search into beginnings, the mythologies, the myths, the stories, the search in living structures in our biology, the search in the prophet's dream, the search in the common consciousness, and the search in our identity. He is, I believe, pointing us in the direction of reimagining the human plight. And a large part of this reimagining has to do with the necessity for understanding our origins and our place as part of creation. Of course, this is the understanding of indigenous people all over the world. It is the understanding that Howard Thurman knew of, part of the wisdom of humanity that is crucial to finding our way to our place in life, the life of the universe. Well, I'd like to close with a powerful poem from Meister Eckhart, certainly a relative of Thurman's. The poem is entitled When I Was the Forest. It goes like this. When I was the stream, when I was the forest, when I was still the field, when I was every hoof, foot, fin, and wing, when I was the sky itself. No one ever asked me, did I have a purpose? No one ever wondered, was there anything I might need? For there was nothing I could not love. It was when I left all we once were that the agony began. The fear and questions came, and I wept. I wept. And tears I had never known before. So I returned to the river. I returned to the mountains. I asked for their hand in marriage again. I begged. I begged to wed every object and creature. And when they accepted, God was ever present in my arms. And he did not say, where have you been? For then I knew my soul, every soul, has always held him. May we follow the teachings of our elders. Thurman, Eckhart, Dunbar Ortiz, Helio Whitaker, Grandma Aggie, and so many others. And may we welcome reality, as tough as it is. May we live it fully, remaining present, attentive, and accepting.